And for more on the crisis in Gaza, I'm joined now by Phyllis Bennis. She directs the new Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies, a think tank which is based here in Washington, D.C. And welcome back to our program. We really appreciate it. Wow, the casualties are just mounting over the last 24 hours. Now 27 Israelis killed, 550 or more Palestinians. What is the best case scenario for a ceasefire?
The best case scenario, we've been hearing about the possibility of returning to the ceasefire terms from the last escalation, if we can use that term, the last Israeli assault on Gaza, which was in November of 2012. At that time, there was a ceasefire that the U.S. played a major role in brokering with Egypt, a very different Egypt before the military coup that overthrew the elected government in Egypt. At that time, there was a ceasefire that called directly for the lifting of much of the siege, particularly in item 1C of that ceasefire agreement. It said that the border crossings would be opened and that implementation of that would begin within 24 hours of the ceasefire. That never happened. It never happened. And that's why there's so much concern in Gaza now to say an unconditional ceasefire takes us back to this completely unacceptable situation of siege and being imprisoned.
So Hamas has dug its heels in on a couple of areas. They want the release of the prisoners, obviously. Right. Israel says, well, we can go back to where we were and just talk. So Hamas is saying, we're not going to do this. We're demanding. Do you think that they're hoping that there will be enough international pressure for them to get what they want?
I don't know what the Hamas leadership is thinking or strategizing. I think we have to look at the people of Gaza. This is a situation where you have 1.8 million people. 43% of them, Susan, are children under the age of 14. Half the population is under 18. But imagine 43% are really children under the age of 14. And that's who is being killed. It's women, it's old people. In this attack, which really has to be called a massacre on Sunday, in this one community in the eastern part of Gaza City, where you had the massive amount of Israeli air fire as well as the attacks on the ground, we saw over 100 people that were killed at that time. Right. And something like 70 of them were children.
Right. You hear both sides pointing the finger at the other with blame, but are both sides guilty of violating the rules of law?
There have been violations from Hamas, absolutely. The rocket fire into Israel that can only be pointed, can't really be aimed at military targets, which would make it legal. They can't do that, so those are violations as well. But this is not Peru and Ecuador in a border dispute. This is an occupied population and an occupier. The occupier has obligations, and those obligations do not include using military force against the occupied population. They have an obligation under the Geneva Conventions to protect that population. Instead, they're using collective punishment. There are reports that they are using illegal weapons. We've been hearing reports that they haven't been confirmed yet about white phosphorus being used against civilian targets. They are using disproportionate force, all of which are clear violations of the Geneva Accords and of a host of other international humanitarian law sectors. So we can't look at this as, well, both sides are, yes, there are violations on both sides, but they're not equal. This is not an equal situation where both sides need to be held equally accountable.
All right, Phyllis Bennis, thank you so much for coming in. We always appreciate having you here at CCTV.
Thank you.